welcome Christian metal community. My name is
Yeah.
Jimmy Sarles, and we're here with Jay. What's going on today?
Hey, yo, what's
Wait,
up, y'all?
that is Jay, right? Or is that Joel?
This is great times today. I don't know how many Christian metal platforms do this. This is our first annual Halloween edition Christian metal interview.
That's right. And we're on here with Wretched. I'm sure he was maybe goes by another name at other times. How are you doing, Wretched?
I'm doing quite well. It's kind of early for me to be up since the sun is still out, and I look out my window and see that bright yellow orb in the sky, and my only response was,
I can
but other
relate.
than that, I'm doing just fine.
I can relate absolutely. Yes, I'm in a hotel room right now. It's so dark in here. I hardly even have any lights on. There's, I will wake up in a few hours and I will go outside and do something with my life. I'm in San Antonio, Texas, so that's pretty cool. So yeah,
It,
man.
is it a myth that you sleep in a coffin, or is that reality?
Well, that would be a really personal question, Jimmy.
I apologize.
We're gonna have to skip that one.
Okay. Let's move on here. So, Wretched, did you grow up in a religious home?
Not at all. That was much later that the reanimator pursued me relentlessly. Apparently, he had an assignment for me, and so, yeah, at some point, when you're being pursued by the ultimate power in the universe, your choices are just to submit or don't, I guess. And for me, there wasn't a question of continuing on my own path any longer.
I love that. I love that. So did you grow up in a musical home at all?
No, not really. Not a musical home. I mean, a home that loved music, a home that uh, very much loud music playing all the time, and my own mother would crank music very loudly. Not, you know, she would say if it's too loud, you're too old. And to this day, she's in her 80s and sings karaoke and does Rob Zombie and Ozzy and things like that. So no,
That's amazing. I
yeah.
love that.
So we
Wow.
still, rock and roll was very much a part of our household.
That is so cool. Well,
Nice.
yes, let's we can get almost. Well, you know what? I'll let Jimmy ask his next question, then we'll go forth.
So you're listening to rock and roll there growing up. What was the first hard rock and metal band that you really caught your attention?
The first thing that I ever owned was in kindergarten. I had a 45 by a band from the 70s called Sweet.
Yeah.
The song was Little
Nice.
Willie, and that was the first band that I was ever into. Followed quickly by Kiss, followed quickly by Alice Cooper, followed quickly by David Bowie, followed
Hmm.
quickly by Mott the Hoople, Slade, Sweet, all those kind of bands like that. Just that kind of 70s uh, theatrical rock, Queen, things like that. Of course, I grew up watching the black and white horror films like, Frankenstein and Dracula and The Mummy and all those Universal monsters and the Hammer films when I was younger. So that was my introduction to both horror and rock and roll. And I had no idea that the two things could actually be combined. I had no idea at all until I discovered the Misfits as a teenager.
That's awesome. So the Misfits kind of changed your life.
Well, I mean, I would say Sweet changed my life, and Kiss and all of that as well. But yeah, I mean, once I discovered the Ramones and the Misfits, that was it for me musically. I still love all those other things. I mean, my palette is very, very wide musically. I'll easily throw on, you know, any of the aforementioned artists and jump right over to black metal or death metal, jump right over to folk music, jump right over to very, very swampy, backwoods, creepy sounding country music. Currently I've been really listening to a lot of like goth and Euro techno, whatever you want to call it. I guess I really don't know what the genre is called, but it's kind of the electronica version of goth, I guess. But so my palette's pretty wide. I like things done with integrity and heart, and good songwriting. I don't like rock and roll just because it's rock and roll. The songs have to be there. I don't like metal because it's metal. The songs have to be there. I don't like folk music because it's folk. The songs have to be there. So, something that catches and bends my ear, I'll give it a listen and probably become a fan.
Very nice. I love it.
It's like so many topics to cover in this, but let's talk about the formation of Grave Robber. Like, how did this band come about? Then what got you all started? Like rehearsing, writing songs, uh, and even touring.
Well, to begin with, we never anticipated that the band would last 20 years.
Yeah,
That was not on our radar or any part of any kind of plan that we had. We were fans of a band called the Huntingtons, which, of course, is like the Christian Ramones, I guess. And we were hoping that a band would come along that would do a Misfits style thing. And the closest thing that we found was the Deadlines, which still isn't quite Misfits. And of course, there's also Blaster the Rocket Man, which again, not quite Misfits.
Right.
And but we were fans of those bands, and I thought that they did touch on the horror aspect, but didn't really fully embrace it. And in fact, the Deadlines jumped ship right after their first album. They went more glam punk, I
I love
guess.
that. Love that first album.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. We used to cover "Go to the Graveyard," so
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, eh, not saying anything bad about those bands, but they didn't go as far with the horror element as we did. Now, what's interesting is from the word go, I thought it was a terrible idea to do Grave Robber. I was not on board, but we were sitting at our particular ecclesia one night, and our pastor was talking about Romans 6 and being dead and, you know, being dead to the world. And we immediately took communion right after. And I thought, well, this is really strange. Here we are. We are dead. We are symbolically eating the flesh and drinking the blood. Like, what are we, zombies? And then it hit me. The zombie apocalypse started over 2,000 years ago. As followers of the Reanimator, we are the zombie apocalypse. We are spreading. Our horde is growing. And it's, it won't be long till we've reached the ends of the earth. And then his return will happen. So here we are, a part of the zombie horde. And, we started right, kind of toying with the idea. And this was 2003. And then in 2005, we had our first rehearsal. 2 full years of prayer went before the first note that we ever played, which is probably the reason why we're still going today. We put that before any music, before anything at all. And all the other projects that the band members were involved in just faded away. And what was left was this. So here we are today.
Very nice. So I know your music is described as horror punk, and for those out there who may have never heard of that, how would you describe that to someone who's never heard of your band?
It would be punk rock with horror.
I agree. Very
Wow,
nice.
that's I'm joking. That's a
No,
cheap that's
I
a
mean,
cheap answer.
okay,
In reality, it's obviously the Misfits were the architects of the genre, and from there, things went in lots of different directions and different styles. There's not one thing that is horror punk any longer. Just like there's not one thing that's rock and roll. There's not one thing that's alternative. There's not one thing that's even you could even say funk or jazz or any one genre isn't just one sound at this point. And with with horror punk, there's a lot of different elements that have come into it. But the central thing with horror punk is that it is punk, and that the subject matter has to do with horror elements, whether it's monsters or movies or just things that are frightening. So in our case, we recognize that there was a lot of blood and guts within the 66 books, and a lot of ways that we could talk about that would reach that audience. Where, as I said earlier, I didn't think that Blaster or the Deadlines, who I dearly love. I want to make sure that everyone understands I'm not putting them down. But I don't know that they really reached the culture the way that I saw it could be reached. I think that they largely stayed within the Christian community, and that wasn't our goal. We are not Christian entertainment.
sure.
And we catch a lot of flack sometimes from people who don't understand that. But by the same token, we get a lot of support by people who do understand that.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. It's funny when you actually talked about you mentioned Blaster earlier. I was thinking about their album, "The Monster That Ate Jesus." They talk about communion also. Like that was such a cool reference. That I think was the first album that kind of turned me on to like the punk aspect of horror and Christian art, should I say? Of course, the horror aspect has always been there in other forms. I think about like some of the medieval art. Um, there's been a definite horror aspect there. And then also I guess as you go through the medieval times and you go to Dante's Inferno, like a lot of what happened there shaped a lot of actual Christian views of things like hell. For the next few centuries or whatever. So yeah, there's definitely been a horror element there. Now that said, a lot of like before the deadlines, before Blaster, a lot of the horror element in Christian art as far as music definitely happened in the death metal community. And of course, a lot of bands like Mortification, um, they caught a lot of flack um, for the horror element. So yeah, let's speak to that. How does it fit into, I would say, religious music? Why are people so afraid of it? Um, you know, yeah, that part too. So we can start there.
Well, it's my opinion that, as you said, the horror has always been there. Let's be honest, the horror is in Scripture. You've got Satan himself appearing all over from the very beginning to the very ending. Uh, on a side note, it's pretty interesting that the most unepic battle in the entire Bible is Jesus' return, where he stands in front of Satan and just planks him in the nose, and it's over. It's it's what, two sentences in that battle between the Creator and the adversary is just gone. It's over. It's just that simple. Nothing really even happens. It's just plink, and he's gone. It's very unepic. But the idea of things being scary and horror, and I've heard so many people say that they think it's wrong to scare people into faith. Well, first of all, if you've ever seen Grave Robber live, you'll notice that our approach to the stage can be a little scary or daunting, but it doesn't take very long to slip into being comical and silly. So truly, we're not trying to scare anybody into believing what we believe. If anything, we're just presenting it in a way that they can hear it in a palatable way. But even scripture talks about things that are really scary. I mean,
Absolutely.
Jesus talks about hell and what that's going to be like if you end up there. And there are all kinds of things that are within the pages of scripture from the very beginning to the end that are warnings and they're things to heed. So if we're gonna get rid of a horror punk band such as Grave Robber, then what are we gonna do with those those scripture verses? I think that it's written in such a way that people in different places, in different times, in different cultures can still read it and understand that it's speaking to them. Maybe this verse over here doesn't speak to Jay Goodwin. Maybe this one doesn't speak to Jimmy, but this one over here might. So I think it's important to have all those ways of communication. And for people that want to shut down Grave Robber or maybe someone who makes a Christian horror film because they just don't like horror, well, that's just an opinion, right? That's all it is. Now, let's not that I'm going to take over your line of questioning, but I will say this. Some people see this face and say, oh no, that can't be Christian. Well, first of all, why? Secondly, is this the face of evil? What does evil look like? What does Scripture say evil looks like?
Mhm.
See, a lot of people believe that what Hollywood has told them evil looks like. They believe that's what evil looks like. Well, Scripture doesn't say that. It says the opposite.
That's
It
true.
says that it's beautiful and enticing. And come on, we're three full-grown men here. Let's talk about this for a
Right.
second. Let's
Exactly.
suppose the three of us are standing in front of a magazine rack, and we
Hmm.
see an issue of Fangoria magazine with a bloody monster, and right next to it is a magazine called Sports Illustrated, and it just so happens to be the swimsuit issue. Let me
Hmm.
ask you a question, Jimmy and Jay. Which one
Yes.
of those covers is going to make you have impure thoughts quicker? The monster or the half-naked girl? Well,
Sports Illustrated,
you can
absolutely.
probably you can probably guess my answer. So
Yes.
so things that are scary or horror related, I don't see that as evil. I don't view it that way. Now, if others do view it that way, well, that's again comes down to opinion, not fact. Because I've seen people who have been in fires and their faces are burnt and scarred and they look horrific. Does that mean that their hearts are bad? Does that mean that they are bad people? Does that mean that they are evil? Does that mean that they are beyond being saved? No, it does not mean that at all. And one last point I'd like to make is this is theater. This is a presentation.
Yep.
So, if we're going to get rid of Grave Robber, are we going to get rid of all actors? If we're going to get rid of actors, where do we stop? I mean, we can get rid of the naughty ones, get rid of the good ones. I mean, how do we draw the line?
Hmm.
And as I said before, this is not Christian entertainment anyway. I'm thankful for every Christian that supports us. I'm thankful for every Christian that encourages us, buys our t-shirts, helps us out along the way. I am beyond grateful for 20 years of being able to do this. But let's be clear, this is to reach a very, very hostile, angry, dying world. It doesn't have anything to do with trying to save the church. Although, there have been moments where maybe the church needs to be shaken up a little bit as well.
Wretched, I love that you're clear on your mission and you know where you're going and you know what you're doing, right? So that's awesome. Speaking of undead things, did you know that Grave Robber still has a MySpace page?
Oh, here's something interesting. On the
Okay.
on the tour we just did, the very first night, we met a guy who has been following us since MySpace, and he had never seen us in 20 years. He's never seen the band, and he came out to the first show of the tour, and that was pretty cool to meet someone who's been a fan that long, and started following us on MySpace.
That's really rad.
I,
Uh,
I don't even know how to use MySpace anymore.
I don't either.
yeah,
Man,
it's still around. It's there, but yeah, I don't know anybody that uses it. Um,
No, and I
so
don't. It doesn't do what it used to do.
right.
I don't.
no. So years ago, it was bought and revamped for music, basically, but it just the interface and the way it just doesn't. I don't know. I think most of the people who actually use it are in other countries, from what I
Yeah,
gather.
that makes sense.
Could be.
So I was looking at Grave Robber on Discogs.com. You familiar with this site?
Yes,
So do do you get to write the about part for the band on Discogs, or does somebody else do that?
I have no idea how any of that even ended up there. So I no, I didn't write
Well,
it.
this is pretty great. I just want to read the description here because this is pretty. It's probably the most impressive one I've seen so far. So it says, predetermined in the mind of the reanimator at the void, Grave Robber was unleashed upon an unsuspecting pre-apocalyptic Earth AD 2005. As wounded and mutilated souls suffer curses unfathomable, death was their eternal verdict. Once submitting to the Reanimator as the master, inviting the ghost to dwell within them, and electing to die to themselves, the zombie slaves escapes the clutches of the grave. Now, these devils reject, arm themselves with sonic, vibrating excursion, excursions and images of horrific realities, bringing an onslaught of sound and warning that will ring into eternity. Rest assured, you will be afraid. You will be very afraid. So, fans of the Misfits, Alice Cooper, Typo Negative, Guar, Kiss, Dancing, and Rob Zombie will find themselves feeling as though they are strolling in a familiar musical history, yet simultaneously wading through a dense mire of uncharted territory. There's nothing more terrifying than an unknown. Grave Robber is the one band that can hold your hand in decidedly horrifying romp, leading you safely to the other side. Heed the call of Grave Robber, die and escape the grave, or die eternally. I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's very impressive. What I'm impressed by is that somebody found that. I did write that in 2005.
Okay,
So I'm
okay.
Wow.
impressed that they found it. I thought that was long gone.
Well, now you
Yes,
know.
I did write
And
that.
they can copy and paste it and throw it somewhere else. There.
Exactly.
Right.
That is
Right.
right.
So, you know what? So there's one thing that actually, what Jimmy just read actually is a great segue into my next question. Terminology. Grave Robber uses a lot of, I guess, terminology that is almost exclusive to you all, which is really cool. It's a great part of your brand. But just using different terms and I guess different symbolism in your songs. There's two things I want to maybe highlight and talk about. Obviously, the Reanimator, just that concept, and then also a song like "I Want to Kill You" over and over again. So let's talk about the the symbolism behind the terminology, and then also a song like that.
Sure. We early on recognized that the use of parable was a very powerful tool. Not only is it a powerful tool, it makes people think, which I believe was exactly the reason why the Reanimator said things in parables. So, because he said, "You'll find me when you seek me with all of your mind," right? Among strength, soul, heart.
Hmm.
So use your brain is basically what he was saying.
Right.
And a lot of times the idea that we are sheep means that we're stupid. That's not what it means.
Right.
That's only a modern cultural thing to say. Sheep are stupid and following blindly. What they meant was following loyally,
Yeah.
not like idiots. Be loyal. So the idea of using parable and symbolism was to, one, reach that culture that would, let's just be honest, okay, you could take somebody like David Crowder, who has a song called Grave Robber.
Yeah.
What he needs to realize turnabout is fair play, but that's another story. So, who knows? It could happen. But so David Crowder goes in to play for our typical audience.
Hmm.
I don't believe he's going to be able to reach them. They're going to reject it immediately. That is not an insult to David Crowder. David Crowder, what he does is absolutely wonderful. He's incredible. And what he does is no one can touch him. He's the best at what he does. But he can't speak to the crowd that we're talking about because you have to speak their language the way that the Apostle Paul did at Mars Hill. And if David Crowder doesn't know the language of these people, he's going to have a hard time communicating to these people. Much in the same way, if we show up on stage in front of David Crowder's crowd, what do you think's going to happen? Maybe we can't communicate as well as he does, and that's probably an absolute fact. So speaking in parables is not so much that we're using symbolism that Christians don't understand. We are using symbols that our audience absolutely understands.
Hmm.
So, as Jay, you and I have had conversations before about white and black culture and how things are said and how things are perceived and how words are used or how
Right.
words change, how, what it means in this culture and that culture. And those are good conversations to have because if I want to speak to a particular culture and I don't understand the
Right.
terminology of the culture, they're going to think I'm saying something directly opposite of what I'm saying in many cases. So
Absolutely.
the parables and the symbols to someone who's not a part of that culture seems like, wow, look at all the symbols. Well, not to this culture. To this culture, yep, we get exactly what you're saying.
Exactly. Yes.
So, which is okay. Now, to someone who's in the middle, that's not really a part of that culture, but not really a part of this culture, those symbols work really well, and that was just by accident, not by design, that we could say the things that we say in the way that we say it, and they would lean in. What? What does that mean? What are you
Hmm.
saying? What? Oh, that's what that is. So,
Yeah.
for instance, I've referred to the Reanimator. Many times in our shows, I'll say the Reanimator, and then I'll say, maybe some of you don't know who the Reanimator is, but he's the one who could control the properties of water and walk upon it. He's the one that could give sight to the blind. He's the one who could raise the dead. He's the only one in human history to raise himself from the dead. Well, no matter what culture you're in, you understand who the Reanimator is at that point. So the symbols are there very much on purpose. And so a lot of what we use is horror movie titles, and maybe the song doesn't have anything to do with the movie, but it uses the title as a tie-in to whatever the subject matter is of the song.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
one of the things you're talking about horror, and people use skulls as symbolism all the time. And I don't know, in the Christian metal group, we have people like, oh, that can't be Christian. That has to be evil. It's a
Oh
skull. And
man.
I'm like, yeah, but we all have one. Like, how is that evil? Like, I don't get that. I can't relate to it. Um,
I think it's interesting that the skull is a universal symbol of death, no matter
mm,
where you are in the world.
true.
Everyone knows. It doesn't matter what country, what continent, what part of the world you're in. A skull is a universal symbol of death, and yet, Jesus Christ died on a place called Place of the Skulls.
Very true.
So if we're gonna just again poo-poo away everything that's a skull, are we gonna get rid of that now? You're right. Each one of us carries one around with us.
That is so true. That is so
Yes.
true. Yeah.
I'm also wondering. So, kind of changing subjects. Are you a fan of Calibretto 13? Do you remember that band? Yes. I booked
Ab-
them. Yep.
Absolutely, yeah. Joe is a wonderful guy. You know, with a very interesting journey that he's been on for years. And
For sure.
last I heard that he either had returned to faith or was contemplating. So his story's not over yet. I
No,
wouldn't count him. I wouldn't
yeah,
count him out.
I know he formed another band later on, and yeah, I can't remember the name, but I booked their last tour as actually it was just Calibretto at the time. It was great
Oh,
show,
that's cool.
but they had a band on tour with them called Mercury Radio Theater. Did you ever?
Yes,
Yes. Okay. I bring
yes.
this up because like nobody else knows this band.
When Grave Robber very first started, we played with Mercury Radio Theater several
Amazing.
times.
Oh, very nice, very unique band. For those who don't know, they were instrumental, and they had a video that played in the background. But yeah, that everybody was kind of like, "What's
That's
going on?" But
interesting concept.
very artistic. Yes. So, Richard, tell us about a time, and I'm sure you've got many stories, when you're at a concert or you're at a show and you have a positive impact as a band or an individual on somebody there, that was, not planned, it was unexpected. Um, just give us some positive stories for that, or just one or two.
Well, I was just sharing this story with Mrs. Wretched today.
This is Richard.
Probably the most shocking moment that we ever had. Positively shocking. We've had some negatively shocking things too, but positively shocking was we were playing in Mexico on a Sunday night in a town called, well, I can't remember the name of the town now offhand, but this particular town, after we got done, and I would say that it's a very fertile place for a ministry because there's lots of spirituality down there. They believe in the supernatural. They believe in spirituality. And I believe it's my job as a mouthpiece to kind of say what I believe that spirituality actually is, and where they should put their trust and their hope and their faith in. And so that's what I do when I go down there. One night in this town, it was the biggest crowd we had ever played for, 4,000 people. And afterwards, a group of young men came up to me and in Spanish, and of course I couldn't understand it. They said, "We want that." And so I got a translator, and he said they want to essentially join the zombie horde that I mentioned earlier. So I said, okay, and I led them in a prayer. And they said, what do we do now? I said, well, now you tell somebody. And of course, what I meant was you tell someone the testimony of what just happened. Instead of doing that, what they understood was to go get other people and have them pray for the same exact thing. I don't know too many people that moments after becoming a follower of Jesus Christ went and evangelized and got more people to pray. But that's what they did. They split up and went out and gathered other groups of people, and we stood there and watched these pockets of kids, 5 people, 6 people, as high of numbers as 10, pray. And there was a pastor there who was standing next to us who spoke English, and he said, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what just happened, but I've never seen anything like that. And I said, it had nothing to do with the grave robber. It had nothing. I mean, well, let's just say it like this, Jimmy and Jay. That was the first time in my life where I didn't have a problem being called a tool. Because
That's incredible.
that's exactly what happened. And so, I mean, that doesn't happen with us all the time. I think we're more seed sowers than anything else. But every now and then, something incredible like that does happen. But we've seen instances where there have been people that are possessed. We've seen instances where we literally had to pray against that. We've had instances where people have shown up to give us the riot act and straighten us out. And by the end of the show, there was one older lady in Greenville, South Carolina, who sat at the back of the room scowling. And then at the end of our show, I looked out and she was gone. I thought, well, she just left. Well, I couldn't see that she was right at the front of the stage, almost beneath me, singing along to the final song, which is always Army of the Dead. And she, after we left the stage, she came up to me and grabbed me and hugged me and started weeping on my shoulder. And she said, I am so sorry. How can you ever forgive me? And I said, forgive you for what? She said, I came here because I told my church that I was going to come here and berate you and tell you that what you were doing was evil and wrong. But after seeing it for myself, she said, I realized that I was wrong.
Wow.
And so, an 80-something-year-old woman had her mind changed just by seeing it. I don't feel it's my job to go around trying to change people's minds. And every once in a while, I'll jump on when somebody makes some kind of comment about grave robber, and I'll offer an explanation. But it's not my job to change their mind. I mean, we're not for Christians. Again, very thankful for the Christians that do support us. But that's not the design. The design is to reach a very violent, angry world with the message of hope, the message of salvation. That's the goal.
That's very good. That reminds me Squad 5 song. I'm not here to change the world. I just want to change your mind. Love it.
Well, yeah, but even in that, if someone says, no, I don't believe it, well, okay. Because I don't believe it's my position. My position is to be a mouthpiece. It's well, it's the Holy Ghost. That's who changes the hearts.
100%. And I think there's a
Wretched
lesson
grave
in that.
robber can't change a heart. I can't
Right.
change someone's heart.
No, we're just a tool.
Yes.
I think there's a
Right.
lesson in that though about coming to experience something instead of just judging by looks or what you hear or see. If you actually go and experience it, the Holy Spirit can change your mind through that.
Facts.
Well, right here in our midst, we have the person who I believe has used the word assumption and assume more than any other human being that I have ever heard in my entire lifetime, and that's Jay Goodwin. Use that word assumption and assume on social
Right.
media, and that's why I
True.
engage in conversations with Jay. Rather than make an
It's like,
absolute call on something, I would rather say, okay, Jay, what's your thoughts on this? What's your
true.
ideas?
For sure.
Where are you coming from?
True. True. For
I would
sure.
much rather, and I would much rather do that with, you know, Satanist, atheist. And by the way, some Satanists that I've met are some of the kindest, nicest people I've ever met in my entire life. And unfortunately, there have been people who put the name tag Christian on their shirt, and they're some of the most terrible people I've been around.
This
And
is so
I,
good.
I hate to say that. I'm only saying it because it's true. Now, does that mean I think that all Christians? No. What I think is the people who actually are submitted to the lordship of Jesus Christ are going to exhibit love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self control. The people that just put on the name tag when they walk into the church and clink their money down into the tithing plate or whatever. I mean, though, are a lot of cases they're not really following. They're churchians, not followers of
Oh
Christ. They're
man.
followers of church, and so you know that's what we deal with. And unfortunately, I've said this before. Yeah, one bad apple can ruin the whole thing, right?
True.
What was that old Jackson 5 song? One bad apple, right? I mean, it
Hmm.
doesn't spoil it all. But listen, sometimes those churchians will hear the message, and a man comes to faith by hearing. So they will sit there for years and years and years, just being a churchy, and then one day it'll click.
Hmm.
So I don't want to get rid of the churchians. You're welcome. You're welcome to be here. You're welcome to be a part of the zombie horde. But, you know, at least learn the decorum. Learn that we don't treat people like
Correct.
utter crap. We don't do that.
Yeah,
Man, it's
and I think so. You shouldn't have an ichthus on your car if you're going to be cutting people off and flipping people off and things like that too. Just that's what came to mind when you were saying that.
right. Right.
That's
Absolutely.
that's exactly what I'm referring to.
Man, that's so good. You know what? I want to circle back around to just this is almost random, but Brazil. You were talking about just Mexico and stuff. I think that of all the places I've done concerts in the world, I have not been to Mexico, not to perform anyway, or Brazil. There's something about like those places where everybody, Christian, secular, whatever, have said that those crowds have always been the most like beautiful, exciting, people to play to. Like, what's been your experience overall playing in those places?
Well, first of all, Mexico knows how to party. That's the first thing. They will use any excuse to have a good time. What? It's Tuesday. Let's go. It doesn't matter what. So it's all about music and food and dancing and singing. I mean, every place that we go, there are people that show up that are friends of the tour that bring food, and the crowds sing along, and it doesn't matter. The first tour I ever did, I saw this little ranchero guy, little tiny, tiny, short little Mexican guy with a cowboy hat and cowboy boots, wearing his chaps, and he's doing his little ranchero Mexican dances to a death metal band playing on stage. I mean, they don't. It's there's an event, so we're all going, right? And in the United States, we're so segregated by our music as well as other things, but especially music. It's like even the metal community, it's like, well, I don't like this kind of metal. I only like that kind of metal. And, well, there's this deathcore show going on. Well, I don't listen to deathcore. I listen to death metal, so I'm not going to the deathcore show. Well, there's a horror punk thing going on. Well, I don't listen to that kind of punk. I only listen to this kind of punk. And so it's in Mexico. It's I'm going to the event. So when you look out in the crowd, are you going to see some punks? Yep. Are you going to see some metalheads? Yep. Are you going to see some goths? Yes. Are you going to see those rancheros in their cowboy hats? Yes. Are you going to see moms and dads with kids with their strollers? Yes. And so it's this very unified crowd. Now, are they going to like every bit of music they hear? No, that would be ridiculous to expect that. But they're there and they engage. And so, yes, Jay, to what you're saying, they will immediately jump in. And our songs are basically campfire songs with the woes and all that. They're designed for people who've never heard it before to immediately sing it. That's by design. And we try to draw people in with those songs. And it's been very successful. And then and then the message comes, and that's good. And we're also there as ambassadors because a lot of times people in Mexico, they want to know two things, two questions. One, why do people in the United States hate us?
Oh no.
I'm like, well, we don't. There's a very, very small group of bigots that don't like you, but we don't hate you.
And we don't like those bigots.
Yeah. And it's like, please don't watch the media and get your ideas about people from the United States, which, by the way, Mexico is America. You know,
True.
something we forget about. We say
South
America.
America.
Well, no, Mexico is North America. North America is
Yeah.
Canada, United States, and Mexico.
True, yeah.
When we say America, that's kind of a weird way to put it, really, if you think about it. Anyway, that's the first question they want to know. Like, why do people in the United States hate us? We don't. We don't. Not by and large. Now, do dislike people coming into the country illegally? Yeah, maybe, right? We might have different opinions of that, but
Sure.
nobody's hating the Mexican people that I know. It's mostly, people who are bigots and people that just are full of hate to begin with. I mean, and you know what? Those people aren't going to like Jay. They're not going to like me. They're not going to like. I mean, we could make a long list of the people that that particular group of people hates because that's just what they do. Well, the second question that they want to know in Mexico is, why do you put chemicals in your food? But that's a really good question.
A really good question.
Because even their hot dogs taste better than ours down there.
I can believe that. Wow. Yeah, and I've heard many stories that they will travel for a whole day or 2 days to go to a show there. Like they're serious about it. Even if they have to walk, whatever.
Well, I don't know that anyone has ever told us that, but that there's a good chance.
Yeah. So have you ever heard of? There's a podcast called "Atheists Having Coffee with Christians."
Yes.
Oh man, I feel like you would be great on that show. I just watched. He just interviewed Doug Van Pelt from Heaven's Metal, and it was great. It was a good conversation. So, just a thought I had.
That show out some more too, man. That's a really great show. I
Yeah,
think
he actually had the guy from Vengeance Rising that passed away, Roger.
He sure did. That's
He
how I
was
found out about
the only one that got an interview in like 20 years.
Wow. Crazy.
I know, right? Man, that's interesting. You know what? Here's something that is an interesting point of discussion. Just really quick, a few things that we talk about in the group Christian Metal Group a lot are things like the top bands. We definitely have this whole thing where a lot of people. It's like a going joke right now where everybody talks about Skillet. Not everybody. A lot of people loathe it actually. Like the top bands are like Striper, PLD, Skillet, Disciple. It might be another too, like maybe Theocracy or whatever. Like I said, it's an ongoing joke or whatever. But also another thing that people tend to talk about, like maybe one of the top three subjects is such and such music Christian enough? Christian content. Like, are you saying like Jesus per minute? And then also, lastly, bands that have with members or whole bands that have left the faith. Um, I almost kind of want to touch on a couple of those real quick, especially Grave Robber being in the game for a while, and also being being you having a being a record label head for a while, and we'll be getting into this more in part two of this interview, but we'll just give like a brief a brief summary right now of this, and yes, there will be a part two. That's just a spoiler alert. All right. Anyway, so let's start with the most popular bands. Some of those, ironically, aren't even metal bands. A lot of times, sometimes it might be like rock bands or hard rock. But it seems like a lot of times in our group, people tend to focus on, like I said, it's just like like I said, Disciple, Skillet, uh, whatever. So, um, why is it that people tend to gravitate a lot of times towards the most popular, most whatever bands, and how do you think that affects like the underground?
I think that's a good question for Nickelback fans. No. Okay, all joking aside, I think people just get into what they get into and they hold on to it. And I don't think most people go out of their way to seek out new music. Most people don't. People that like yourselves and like myself that truly love music, and I love the exploration and discovering new artists and discovering new things that I get bored way too easily. So I love Mortification. I haven't listened to them in months, and I love them, but I haven't listened to them. It's probably been 6 or 7 months since I've listened to them,
Yeah.
but I love them because I've been busy exploring other music. So it's not that I don't. Now the opposite of that, I think, is the people that fall in love with Skillet or fall in love with obviously Striper still has a massive following, Petra massive, Skillet massive, and the bulk of their crowd has found that and they hold on to it and they don't really seek out anything else. And sometimes when things are very, very popular, there's two mindsets. Number one, there's the mindset of, well, that's super popular, therefore I'm going to reject that. And I unfortunately miss out on a lot of really cool things because I have a tendency to do that same thing. Now, if it's too popular, and I kind of reject it just
Right.
because it's too pop. And I don't mean to. It's just character flaw, I guess.
No, I feel it though,
But
honestly.
yeah, but then there are other people who are the opposite. They'll look across the bow and say, okay, what's the really popular thing, and I better jump on so I can be a part of whatever's going on, and that's okay too. Either way, neither one of those bothers me. But I think that's the reasoning behind it. And how does it affect the underground? Well, it affects the underground in the way that someone who might be a massive Skillet fan is probably not going to wake up one day and say, "I wonder if there's a horror band out there," you know,
Right.
because they're going to hold on to that. And so it was interesting on this tour when we announced this tour we just got back home from,
Hmm.
and it was interesting how many people we met that had never heard of Grave Robber after 20 years.
Wow.
That's actually encouraging. It's not encouraging that they missed us for 20 years. It's encouraging that they're here now, and that's okay.
Yeah.
We
So
don't have the big marketing machine. We don't have the big promotion behind us or any big money behind us. In fact, we don't have any money behind us.
Right.
Nothing, zero. And so for anyone to discover us is a positive. So that was good. But it wasn't just people coming out to the shows. It was also people that saw the advertisements on social media that suddenly Went, okay, well, I'm going to check this out. And I had more people sending me private messages saying, wow, I just discovered you guys, and I won't be able to see you on tour because I live in Nevada and you're not coming anywhere near there. But I just discovered you, and your band is great. I'm going to tell everybody that I know. That's great. You know, we're very grateful and thankful for everything that we've gotten so far, which, I mean, no one in the band is, no one's added a wing onto their house, or a ballroom. Too soon?
Oh, ballroom. Right. We're not
I
doing that.
figured you're rolling in those Spotify checks that are coming in, you know.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're yes. I mean, we're making Lincolns. I mean,
Yeah. So, Wretched, have you ever played with an openly satanic band? And if so, how was that experience?
Good stuff.
oddly enough, we have, and really didn't have a problem. I think they felt the same way that we felt, and that was that as long as they got their 15 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever to say what they wanted to say, we got our 45 minutes to say what we wanted to say. And then most of the conversation between that band and us was about gear, guitars,
Yeah.
amps, drums. I really work hard to find common ground with people because there's a lot of people who were former Satanists that are now believers. And I don't want to be an instrument that pushes someone away from that. I
That's
want to be
good.
an instrument of peace. We are to be peacemakers. So, someone's story isn't over until they take their last breath.
Yeah.
And I believe that human beings are the most valuable thing on planet Earth. And, you know, someone who is a follower of the Reanimator and someone who is a Satanist, I believe God sees them with the same value.
That's
Now,
good.
does God love his family? Yes. Yes, very much. Enough to die for us. You know, does he love the Satanist? Yes, very much. Enough to die for him. Does he love a whore? Yes. Drug addict? Yes. Alcoholic? Yes. I mean, the list doesn't stop.
Sure.
But, but again, we're talking about people whose stories aren't over yet. I, I would say this. I believe that we are called to mine the gold in people. We are
Yeah.
called to look for the commonality and look for the good in people and try to, as best we can, you know, be discerning, certainly. But let's find the good. Let's find the common ground. Let's find the thing that we can start with
Yes. Yes.
rather than the thing that separates us. Because if that's all we're doing is looking for the thing that separates us, how are we ever going to get the chance to tell them about the goodness of God?
Hmm.
We won't.
Mm. Well said.
Wow. That's really cool. So, there was something that I was talking about earlier, and dang, I'm gonna have to do this offline. What you did say about doing stuff with satanic bands. I'm definitely wearing the most controversial shirt that I've ever worn on the show, and it's Dark Funeral. You familiar with Dark Funeral? Yeah,
Yes.
cool, cool. Yeah, so I actually went to one of their shows. My wife went to actually pray with the bus driver who we know. So we prayed for him right in front of the bus, but also we met some of the guys and the manager and stuff, and they actually gave me this free shirt also. But we saw the show. It was it was kind of what you would expect, you know. But yeah, very interesting stuff. But one thing that stuck out to me that the bus driver said, his name was Lugo, by the way. He said that as far as the way he was treated on that tour, he was treated better driving for them than he was like with some of the Christian acts that he's worked with, you know. And that was interesting. He said they were actually open to conversations and all
Well,
the
that's kind of sad, though.
yeah. I know it. And then right after that, he drove for Willie Nelson for his tour, so that was pretty cool too. But yeah, that was an interesting thing, and I think that as Christians, we can definitely stand to. It seems like I think now, in this current, especially political climate, we tend to, not all of us, but sometimes we tend to be on the offense, no matter what side you fall on. But tend to be more on the offense or even defensive about things that you're against or whatever, you know. But a lot of times, especially people that are watching us, you know, they need to see something that's totally different than what we're showing them. And you know, the Bible, of course, talks about being known by our love, and I think that we see that, like in what Grave Robber is doing, it's really all about the love. You know, what did Paul say? Where he said that I preach so that I may win some. Now, it ain't got to be everybody, but if there's some that come to salvation because of what I do, you know, then I've done my job. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think that when what we should be exemplifying is the fruit of the Spirit. And the first one is love, right? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self control. That's what the world needs to see. Now, I admit I'm still working on some of those.
I think we all are for sure.
Self control, it's not my strong
Um,
suit,
Mercy,
right?
yeah, for sure.
I think I'm pretty good with the love, joy, and peace,
Mhm.
you know, but again, what the world needs to see from the church is those nine in concert with each other, all at the same time on a regular basis. Everybody has a bad day, you know, but as a rule, those nine need to be what the world is seeing, and not in a fake way, not putting on a show. But I gotta wonder when I see someone call themselves a Christian and I don't ever see love, joy, peace, patience, etc. If I don't ever see that, I gotta really wonder if that person really knows the Reanimator or not, because you will change if you know him. You will exemplify those things if you know him. Those things will change in your life if you know him. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Without him, I don't know anybody that exhibits all nine of those at the same time on a consistent basis without him. Now,
Very good point.
are there people in the world who will exhibit those? Occasionally. Will they exhibit all nine? Occasionally. But as a regular basis, not so much. So I think that's what the world needs to see from us. And I'm going to tell you right now, if I wasn't a follower of the Reanimator, there are a lot of people that I've encountered that I would say that person's a really bad ambassador for this. You know, if you want me to believe in your God who supposedly changes you from the inside out, well, I'm going to need to see some evidence of that. And if all I'm seeing is you attacking other people for thinking differently or believing differently or looking differently. And again, let's go back to that. What does evil look like?
I've asked that question many times in the group, and I never gotten a clear answer.
Because the only clear answer is the one in Scripture, and no one wants to say evil looks beautiful. But I'll tell you, it does. Again, going back to what we said earlier, the girl on the swimsuit issue of Sports Illustrated is beautiful. If she wasn't, she wouldn't be there.
Right? That is a very fair point. So, what can fans and hopefully some new fans expect from this band called Grave Robber in the next year?
Nothing. Right after this interview, we're done.
Okay.
No, we have a collection of everything that we've ever recorded coming out in December on Rocks. It's called Corpus Operum, body of work, and
Nice.
it's everything remastered in one nice, neat little package. and that's coming out very, very soon.
I will be looking forward to that.
We have a record label in Mexico called Bam Bam Records, which is putting out a greatest hits record. We just announced it, and of course, I can't say the name of it. It's Los Muertos Resucitando or something like that. It just means the dead will rise. And
Sure.
it's double meaning there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, three different meanings, but the dead will rise. That's coming out very shortly. Working on a new record for next year. We just recorded an EP in Marietta, Georgia, at the studio. I don't know if you're familiar with the Queers. They're a secular punk rock band.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Joe, the lead singer from the Queers, is a good friend of mine, and we just recorded at his studio in Marietta, Georgia. We'll probably be releasing that in the early part of next year. So we're actually quite active.
Very very nice. Looking forward to it.
Yes, sir. That's great stuff, man. So
So
yeah, man. So I think Jimmy, you can ask the famous questions
yeah.
now.
So
We'll get to
Wretched, tell us one thing about yourself that people watching this may not know.
Okay, there's a lot of things that I could tell you that might be surprising. Let's see. What's one thing? When I was 14 years old, I became the state yo-yo champion.
Whoa,
Impressive. Yeah.
that's
Yes.
interesting. That's very.
I'm also a Barry Manilow fan.
Now that is surprising.
He's an incredible songwriter.
I mean, yeah, the facts are facts, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean
So
he's got the record, he's got the numbers to prove that. Yeah,
did you listen to Barry while you were yo-yoing?
think I think no, that was during a phase where when I was really young, I listened to Barry Manilow, and then later on, I kind of went back to it. I don't listen to him all the time, but the funny thing is, on this last tour, I mentioned that to the other Grave Robber members, and they all laughed at me. And then I threw on some songs, and they were like, "Dang, wow, that's really a good song." Yeah, you know,
so,
good songwriting is good songwriting.
so to become the state champion, how many hours a day does one have to practice?
At that time, probably 3 hours a day
Wow,
yeah,
that's
and
pretty intense.
Yeah,
it was,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. So here's
I can still do some of the tricks, but not all of them.
Okay.
okay, cool. Yeah, do that on stage sometime. How about that?
Yeah, incorporate that into your show.
I had thought of it. I thought of it.
Walking
Yeah,
Dead
And,
type.
there's a lot of things that I suppose my wife says I'm one of the most interesting people that she's ever met, and what she means by that is my tastes are incredibly eclectic, and my experiences are very unusual.
Sure.
The things that I've leaned into are generally different. You know, I I never joined a bowling league, or I didn't play darts with the guys. My things that I chose to do were very different. Like I became an Eagle Scout in Boy Scouts. Uh, my my uh, my childhood was a lot different than most. And so I should mention that my grandmother was a Sunday school teacher who allowed me to stay up late on Saturday night and watch Creature Feature
nice.
Oh
as
yeah.
long as I would go to church in the morning.
That's right.
So all I can say is this is all her fault.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah. So what is your favorite thing about being a Christian?
Think, and this is only, I mean, I think I've only really embraced this recently, but I think it's the peace in the midst of turmoil. When things aren't going right, I still have peace. And it's difficult because I don't know too many people around me that are able just to breathe and be at peace. I used to be a nervous wreck. I used to be a worrier, and I just don't worry anymore. But love, joy, peace. That's the third one. So, and I think that I've learned the difference between joy and happiness. I mean, happiness is fleeting. Happiness is a chocolate chip cookie right out of the oven, right? That's happiness. Happiness goes away, but joy is deep and abiding. And so to embrace joy, to embrace peace, and to know that even when things look like they're not going to work out, I just know that they will, So that's, and even if they don't work out the way that I think they should work out, they'll work out in the way that he wants it to work out.
Very well. What can the Christian metal community do to support Grave Robber?
They could empty their bank accounts and send it all to us.
Yes, they could.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that, of course, I'm joking. I have to say that before somebody sees this and thinks I'm serious. Because somebody somewhere will think that. But
We're having a new feature, Wretched, out of context.
yes, we should do another interview where
Yeah.
I answer incorrectly to everything. The To support Grave Robber, I think that just follow all of our social media sites. Let other people know. If people want to buy our music or our t-shirts, I mean, anchormerchandising.com has literally every design we've ever done in 20 years.
Yep.
And if there's an item there that you want, like if you want a clock, you want tennis shoes, you want whatever that doesn't have the design, just let us know and we'll make sure it happens.
Sure.
We've already done that multiple times where somebody wanted something very specific and we're able to do that for them. But that's the main thing, is just to engage. Let us know you're there.
Awesome. Love it, man. Well, this has been great. Thank you, Wretched. We look forward to talking to you again sometime.
I appreciate you having me.